all rise. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. The Supreme Court of Indiana is now in session. Please be seated.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today on this wonderful celebration of the tremendous tenure of Justice Brent Dickson. We're pleased to have many distinguished guests here with us. I'd like to first start off with introducing my colleagues. They join me in greeting you today. Justice Robert Rucker, Justice Brent Dickson, Justice Mark Massa, and Justice Steve David. Justice Dickson will be introducing his family and some special guests a little later in the ceremony, so I'll begin by recognizing our judicial colleagues, and if you can please just hold your applause until we get through. I also want to welcome the people. This is being webcast live throughout the state, and we also have the Senate is full of trial court judges that wanted to celebrate in this day with Justice Dickson, so thank you and welcome. From the Court of Appeals, we have Chief Judge Vedic, Nancy Vedic, along with their colleagues, Judges Edward Najam, Patricia Riley, James Kirsch, Margaret Robb, Michael Barnes, Paul Mathias, Terry Crone, Cale Bradford, Elaine Brown, and Rudy Pyle. We also are joined by Tax Court Judge Martha Wentworth. From the federal bench, we always enjoy having our friends. We have David Hamilton, John Tinder, Sarah Evans Barker, Larry McKinney, and Jane Magnan Stinson. Welcome, thank you. Make sure I have everybody there, yes. We also are very grateful to have a number of our former justices that have practiced or have sat on the bench with Justice Dickson. We have former Chief Justice Randall Shepard, Frank Sullivan Jr., Ted Boehm, and Myra Selby. Welcome. We're also joined by many distinguished state elected officials from the executive and legislative branches. And knowing that this is a busy week, for many of you, thank you for coming and giving up your time this afternoon. Welcome Governor Pence, Lieutenant Governor Eric Holcomb, former Governor Joe Kernan, Attorney General Greg Zeller, Secretary of State Connie Lawson, and Auditor Suzanne Crouch. We also have many of our members, our friends from the House and Senate. We had Speaker was going to be here today, but we have Ed Delaney, Bill Friend, Eric Cook, and Gerald Torr. Senators Gene Breaux, Jim Buck, Sue Glick, and Jim Merritt. Thank you. We're going to start our time this afternoon with Reverend Amy Conner Cornell, a former clerk of Justice Dickson, who will lead the invocation.
Will you bow your heads with me? Lord, your word instructs us to give honor to whom honor is due. And so we have gathered here today to honor Justice Brent Dickson. We thank you for his life of service, integrity, and kindness to the people of Indiana. We thank you that he said yes to you and to your call to justice. We thank you that each and every day for over 30 years, he has continued to say yes and do the hard thing of remaining faithful. We ask that each of us here would aspire to the level of humility and hard work as evidenced in Justice Dickson. And now may your Holy Spirit descend upon us and pour out the oil of joy on this most celebratory occasion. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Cornell. We'll now hear from Justice Mark Massa.
Thank you, Chief. Honored guests, Governor Kernan. When you think of how many people you know in the world, there aren't too many you remember meeting for the very first time. I'm sure Brent Dickson doesn't remember meeting me on December 18th, 1985, but I remember that day. For the younger people in the room, this is what we called, back in the days before the internet, Twitter, and social media, a press release. Printed on paper and distributed to the State House Press Corps. I retrieved it from the State Archives the other day. It's dated December 18th, 1985, on the letterhead of Governor Bob Orr. It is headlined, "Dickson Named to State Supreme Court." It was written by a young deputy press secretary in the governor's office who sits before you today. Now, it's no secret that governors frequently don't have time to dictate quotes and releases from scratch. Isn't that right, Governor? And that their aides will draft these announcements, include a quote, and get the governor's approval. Here's what I came up with on that day. "I have all the confidence in the world that Brent Dickson will make a fine Supreme Court justice," Governor Orr said. "He is an outstanding attorney and legal scholar with a good dose of common sense and practical judgment. His legal expertise and experience in matters ranging from insurance and corporate law to criminal cases will make him a valuable member of the court." Okay, not the most soaring rhetoric. But that wasn't Bob Orr's style. But it sure was prescient. Governor Orr's confidence was rewarded, and his predictions more than came true. Brent Dickson has been an outstanding scholar with common sense and practical judgment. You will hear a lot today, I'm sure, of his decency and kindness, the most important character traits that he lives every day. But this focus, worthy and appropriate though it may be, should not overshadow the huge impact he has made on the law in Indiana these 3 decades that passed in a flash. In the most important subjects of state constitutional law, criminal and civil procedure, he has left a body of work under his name as significant as any of the 108 individuals who have been honored to serve on this court and whose pictures adorn these walls. He will be quoted and cited for decades to come and cast a shadow as large as the void he leaves. We will miss his wisdom, his uncommon grace, and good cheer. A final note to Justice Dickson and to Jan and to his clerks. I couldn't help noticing when Justice Scalia suddenly passed in February that some of the loveliest tributes written in his honor came from his former law clerks. The clerkerati, he playfully called them. One in particular stood out, published in the New York Times by a current justice on the Michigan Supreme Court. And it was a reminder that all of us who are afforded this wonderful privilege over time develop a second family, if you will, of young lawyers who go out into the world and leave their mark but always seem to come back. I'm fortunate to have seen it from both sides and know that many in Brent's second family are here today and will continue to contribute to his legal legacy for decades to come. To them and to Brent and Jan, I wish you many more years of homecomings and new memories. And I thank you for the privilege of having been a witness to it all. God bless you and good luck.
Justice David.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, partner. Well done. Governor, distinguished guests. Justice Dickson, this crowd gathered here in this historic courtroom, and the crowd down the hall to the right, and the crowd standing around outside waiting for a ticket, as well as those on rooftops and standing on each other's shoulders to get a little peek in the window, merely exemplify the great person that you are and how much you have been respected throughout your entire career and how much you are admired. I even understand that Bernie Sanders is somewhere trying to get into the ceremony. Madam Chief Justice, 4 minutes is not long enough for each of us to pay tribute to this icon. I request an additional 10 minutes.
Denied. I'm thinking about giving some of your time to Justice Rucker.
Things never change. Justice Dickson, your contributions both on the court and off the court are nothing short of historic and simply remarkable. Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, and Larry Bird ain't got nothing on you, sir. And it's difficult, even for those of us gathered here to honor you, to even comprehend the span of your tenure on this court, your lifetime of service to the legal profession, and your commitment to public service and to the people of Indiana. While you have been a BMOC big man on this court for over a third of a century, your national stature is just as large. Everyone knows that you're the second longest serving justice in Indiana's history. You are known across this great nation. And incidentally, there's been 108 justices of the Indiana Supreme Court as of this very moment. Any hints? I'm looking for my fellow Columbus North graduate to give me some code, but none. By comparison, Justice Dickson, the second longest serving U.S. Supreme Court justice was Stephen Johnson Field. I say again, Stephen Johnson Field. Anyone ever heard of him? No. He served more years than you did. He served in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the 1800s, that is. He wrote 544 opinions, second highest on the U.S. Supreme Court. You authored 728. Justice Field was predominantly a politician his entire life. You, sir, have been a public servant your entire life. Prior to serving on the U.S. Supreme Court, Justice Field did a short stint on the California Supreme Court. And while serving as a state Supreme Court justice, he had a special coat made with pockets large enough to hold 2 pistols, so he could shoot through his pockets at his enemies. Unfortunately, that's true. To the contrary, you, Justice Dickson, have always taken the high road and have been the vanguard for professionalism and civility. As they used to say, and a few of us still say, not only have you talked the talk, but you have walked the walk. Justice Field wanted to be Chief Justice so bad, but he was unable to do so because he had too many enemies, both political and personal. You never lobbied to be Chief Justice, but everyone loves you, Justice Dickson, and you were unanimously chosen to serve as our Chief Justice. By some accounts, Justice Field is rated as one of the 5 worst U.S. Supreme Court justices ever. To the contrary, by any account, ever, you have to be one of the 5 best Supreme Court justices Indiana has ever had. Once again, Indiana stands tall compared to the U.S. Supreme Court, and you, Justice Dickson, are a stand-up, stand-out, steadfast man of honor, dignity, and service, a true judicial superhero. And incidentally, since Comic-Con is in town, you might want to know that there's a website where you can actually go, plug in your name, and it will give you your own superhero name. Justice Dickson, I created one using your name, and it came back, Captain Civility. Well, while you are about to be gone from this court, you will never be forgotten. Your legacy of humility, hard work, collaboration, thoughtfulness, compassion, and dedication to the rule of law will live on and on. There are many days of work ahead for you on the Indiana Supreme Court as a senior judge. I am reminded of a quote from John F. Kennedy: "One person can make a difference. Everyone should try." President Kennedy could not have comprehended the difference you have made to so many, for so long. Thank you for being my partner, my mentor, my friend. I join my colleagues on behalf of every lawyer, every judicial officer, indeed every citizen of the state of Indiana, and many other people across this great nation, in thanking you for your service. The legacy you leave will be one that will likely never, ever be matched. Thank you.
Justice Rucker, you're up.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Honored guests, Governor Pence, Cornell, I've had the pleasure of serving with this distinguished jurist for over 15 years. To be exact, it will be 17 years this November. Over that period, I think I've gotten to know him pretty well. So that must mean that I've gained some special insights, some unique granules of truth available only to those on the inside. Well, I hear it all the time. Justice Rucker, what is Justice Dickson really like? You know, up close and personal. We know he's a Hobart Bricky and native son of Lake County. We know his body of work, his hundreds of opinions, his many speaking engagements with civic groups and bar associations, reminding us all of the importance of civility in the profession. We know all that. But what is he really like? Well, sorry to disappoint, but in an antiquated computer jargon, Justice Dickson can best be described as a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. A cool, collected, unpretentious, rock-solid, steady hand. And speaking of hand, many of you may know that Justice Dickson, some time ago, acquired the nickname Fingers for his ragtime jazz piano playing. What you may not know is that while Justice Dickson is a professional, accomplished pianist, I am a rank amateur upright bass player. And for years, we have talked about performing a jazz duo. Think Ramsey Lewis and L.D. Young. I have a long way to go, but Brent, I promise you, we're going to make this happen. And there is one other little tidbit you may not know. According to an Indiana Supreme Court watcher who crunched the numbers and compiled the data, for several years, the two justices who were most aligned in their voting on opinions, the two justices who generally saw eye to eye on more often than not, was this remarkable jurist and yours truly. Brent, you have been an inspiring friend, a delightful colleague. I will miss your wise counsel. But now you have more time to spend with the grandchildren and your lovely wife, Jan, and I can only wish you Godspeed.
Thank you, Justice Rucker. Again, honored guests, and I see Sheila, Representative Klinker joined us as well. Brent, this day is upon us. I've known you for 34 years, 3 months, and 2 days, but who's counting? I quickly learned as an associate working with Brent when I started in 1983 that he really liked the red pen, and he was not shy about editing my work. And I have to say, in the last 3 years, I've gotten quite a kick of slapping a red pen on some of his. The five of us sitting up here spend a great deal of time together, often enthusiastically discussing the law around our conference table, crafting opinions, and at times commenting on each other's. For today, I pulled together a couple examples, and these are just true comments that Brent put on some of our work in the last couple of weeks. Again, it was never about him. It was always about the quality of the collective work of this court. Here's one. You made some important distinctions that we should incorporate into our majority opinion. This is a golden opportunity to put some of these issues to rest. I am very receptive of your suggestions. And there's this one. This section may be read to convey a tone of judicial arrogance. Sound like him? And I'll never forget the rave reviews I got for my first dissent. It was a smoking ban case, majority opinion he wrote, where his comment back to me was, not bad for a rookie dissent. Brent has been an unbelievable mentor to me and so many others. Many days, okay, most days, I find myself plopping in his Purdue chair in his office, most of the time uninvited. And when I'm sitting in that chair, every time I take that opportunity to learn from him, he has been exceptionally generous with his time, wisdom, and institutional knowledge. I will miss him. So how do you measure a legacy that spans 30 years on the bench? And it can't just be done with numbers, 1,500 oral arguments, 900 opinions, votes on tens of thousands of cases. I asked Brent to come to the Judicial and Nominating Commission, and thank you for the members that are here and the time that you give, to just come and talk and give us some suggestions on what he sees after 3 decades on the bench. And I don't know if he realized, but what he told us, he is. Somebody with real-world legal experience, somebody who's practiced law, that's represented ordinary people, understands those issues, knows that the cases that we deal with are more than just numbers. Most of you know Brent from his time in the court, but for 17 years he was a practitioner in Lafayette, Indiana, and his clients adored him. He was an extremely successful advocate for our client, and it was during that time, I think, he developed his deep trust for our jury system. I have to welcome 2 of our partners, Jerry Withard and Bob Reiling, that join us today. As a practicing attorney, he instilled in young lawyers the importance of bar memberships and giving back to their communities. His belief that attorneys need to provide pro bono or volunteer legal services to the poor has been 5 decades in the making. civility, and collegiality. Seek candidates who can and will be collegial, cooperative, and respectful with other justices. Do they appreciate that the tone of a court's opinion, majority or dissent, serves as a role model for the legal profession? I don't know if he knew it, but he was describing himself. Any of the 13 justices that have had the honor of sitting with him can attest that Brent is a firm believer that one can take a principled stand, but do so with humility and an eye to the greater good. I cannot think of a member of the Bar Association or a judge that sat on a bench that has been a stronger ambassador of these principles. He understands that at the end of the day, what's important is respect for our fellow human beings, commitment to judicial restraint. Seek candidates who have respect for case precedent and construing statutes in our constitutions based on their text without judicial activism. Just read his opinions, and you'll find that his work has remained true to that philosophy. Management ability. Seek candidates with a track record of management and administrative effectiveness. Almost all of the judicial reforms that we're dealing with right now, e-filing, commercial courts, pretrial release, change of the administrative structure of the form, all started with his tenure. We even went paperless 3 weeks ago so he could share the love and have a conference. We didn't have a wheelbarrow full of cases delivered to the conference room, and I thank him for doing that somewhat enthusiastically. And finally, personal family life, the importance of personal family life balance. For Brent, his wife Jan, their children, grandchildren, and his deep faith. Those have been the foundation of all that he's been able to accomplish as an attorney and a justice. Brent, your lasting legacy of institutionalizing civility as a bedrock of the Indiana Supreme Court and your large body of work will be remembered a long time. It's been a highlight of my life that I began my profession with you, and I ended your time. We ended your time on the bench together. Thank you so much, kind sir. Governor Pence, I'd like to now invite Governor Mike Pence, who will be giving some remarks on behalf of Justice Dickson.
Chief Justice Rush, Justice Rucker, Justice David, Justice Massa, and Justice Brent Dickson, to Governor Cornell, to so many elected officials who are with us here today, distinguished members of the court present and past. What a great day. I walked up to Justice Dickson, who has not only been a mentor to me, but a friend, and he said to me, "Look how many people showed up to get me to leave." It's a joy to be with you today. It's a privilege, in fact, that I wouldn't have missed for the world. To be with you today as we honor Indiana's 100th Supreme Court Justice on the day of his retirement. The old book tells us, if you owe debts, pay debts. If honor, then honor. If respect, then respect. And today I rise as governor of the state of Indiana, and not just a friend and beneficiary of this good man, public servant, to pay a debt of gratitude and a debt of honor to Justice Brent E. Dickson and his family for a historic tenure on the court, but a career in public service that will inspire Hoosiers for generations to come. His tenure on this court, more than 30 years, can be characterized, as you heard much more eloquently than I will by his colleagues, by a commitment to the rule of law, a devotion to the judiciary itself, and to all of those who labor in smaller courtrooms than this. across the state of Indiana, many of which are here with us today. He also, it seems to me, has lived out a temperament that is particularly important in the judiciary. A commitment to civility and mutual respect. I think it was Plato who said that the most important characteristic of a public person is prudence. And when I think of former Chief Justice Brent E. Dickson, I think of a prudent man who understood the weight of responsibility on his shoulders and discharged it with integrity and a servant's heart. You know, for most Hoosiers, it's hard to envision a time when Brent Dickson was not a member of the Indiana Supreme Court. Appointed by Governor Robert Orr in 1986, and I thought that statement was very eloquent. He served the court and fellow citizens for more than 30 years, and we all know the second longest serving justice in our state's now 200-year history. But as one of his colleagues said, he came from humble beginnings, raised a brickie, which is the Hobart High mascot, earned a degree from Purdue University, graduated from McKinney School of Law in 1968. During his judicial career, we've heard almost 900 civil and criminal opinions, 728 in the majority, and the rest, who's counting? He also was dedicated to improving the judiciary, chaired the Supreme Court's Records Management Committee, has been a driving force, even during my short tenure as governor, in modernizing the information technology that makes it possible for our judiciary to function and for the public to have access to the work of our courts. The Data Processing Oversight Committee, the Task Force for Public Access Court Records, and several other committees all emanate out of a sense that I had from the first time we sat down, that this was a man who was not simply here to serve, but he was here to improve the judiciary in the 21st century for the people of Indiana. His contributions to the life of our state are numerous, and I will not try to recount all of them today. Co-founder of the Sagamore chapter of the American Inns Court of Indianapolis, an organization that actually promotes lawyer civility and professionalism. He's worked as a mediator. He's been involved on the national level. But I think as all of us celebrate here today, he has discharged his duty on the court by creating a body of law skillfully crafted with a reading of and a fidelity to the Indiana Constitution and the Constitution of the United States of America. That commitment to the rule of law has been a lodestar for this court now for 3 decades. And I'm thankful to say, as I ponder who his replacement might be, remembering that I will have in common with that person what it's like to wander around in very big shoes, I'm confident that this court, through its current members and new members, will reflect that same fidelity and draw often on the body of work of this retiring justice. Now, on a personal level, if I can say, I've always been inspired by Brent Dickson's faith, by his character, by his devotion to Jan, the pride that he's taken in his sons, Kyle, Drew, and Reed, his 9 grandchildren. Actually first encountered the Dicksons back when I was serving in the Congress. And every year we would bring students to the State House to expose them to a bipartisan group of officials who served in each branch of government, who would come and who would reflect on what their faith had meant to their service and how it sustained them. And I'll never forget the nights we would bring the students up the stairs and we would walk into this court. And Brent and Jan would open their hearts and open their lives and open their arms to young people. And I can't help but believe that years from now we will see people in black robes who have the same foundation in their life because of those annual encounters. Of course, my fondest memory was a cold day in January of 2013 when I turned to then Chief Justice Brent Dickson to administer the oath of office. I asked him, was honored that he would do it as Chief Justice, but because of our relationship, it made it an even more precious moment for me and my family. And I thank him for that. So I want to take the opportunity before I sit down to exercise the authority vested in me as Governor of the state of Indiana to do two more things. First, I make a practice of not letting anybody leave the building without a particular honorarium. It was established by Governor Gates. It would be more than a half century ago. And it was named after that member of the Native American tribe who was, through their character and through their wisdom and through their courage, was of most value to the chief of the tribe. That was known as a sagamore in Native American times. And Governor Gates would create the sagamore of the Wabash that we from time to time provide to individuals who serve in this building and in places across Indiana who through their life and their character and their work and their service have simply made Indiana a better place. And so today, by my authority as governor, I'm pleased to extend the Sagamore of the Wabash for all he has done and meant to the state of Indiana, to the Honorable Brent Dickson. And I know he won't mind me doing one other thing before I yield the podium. And that would be that one of the things that Justice Brent Dickson has been about is understanding that when one wears the robe, a family bears the burden. And the gratitude that members of the judiciary across Indiana have felt for the care and concern of this justice extends equally to another Dickson. Jan Dickson's service to the state of Indiana and the nation on matters regarding the spouses and family members of judges represents an extraordinary legacy to the state of Indiana, and I think it ought to be recognized as well. She's a member of the Warren E. Berger Society. She was a founder of the Judicial Family Institute, who's so active on issues that affect judges and their families that it would be hard to list today everything that she's done to improve the lives of those who stand next to those who wear the robes. I have witnessed it personally. I have seen her compassion and the way she's come alongside spouses at every level in judiciary in Indiana. And so for all she has done to improve the lives and strengthen the arms of those who stand by those who serve, I'd like to also extend a Sagamore of the Wabash. The debt this state owes to Justice Brent Dickson and Jan can only be repaid by relentless imitation of their example. And this we will do. So on behalf of the 6.5 million people of the state of Indiana, I rise today to say thank you. Thank you, Justice Brent Dickson and your wonderful family, for a job well done. And maybe in words two of you might most appreciate, I will say from my heart, on behalf of the people of Indiana. Well done, good and faithful servant. God bless you in the years ahead.
Thank you, Governor Pence. Justice Dickson.
Governor Pence, Chief Justice Rush, and my colleagues, Justices Rucker and David and Massa, thank each of you for your kind words. As you know, today is my final day, and I am truly overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude for so much. First, I'm grateful to the state of Indiana, its culture, its traditions, its history, and especially the citizens of Indiana who have created and maintained Indiana's very special judiciary system. And citizens who have erected and maintained this spectacular building whose grandeur has uplifted and inspired me for about 7,000 mornings. I'm grateful, too, for the spectacular privilege to have served as a Supreme Court justice for over 30 years, tackling important and exciting challenges with 12 other justices. Think about it. Roger DeBruler, Richard Given, Alfred Pavarnik, Randall Shepard, John Krahulik, Frank Sullivan, Myra Selby, Ted Bohm, Robert Rucker, Steve David, Mark Massa, and Chief Justice Rush. Wow, what a privilege. And I'm likewise grateful for the satisfaction of seeing how Indiana's three branches of government, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative, work respectfully and effectively, each as an independent branch and yet collectively as a team, working together to serve our fellow Hoosiers. I'm also grateful for the remarkable work of our staff attorneys on the court and the personnel in all of the Supreme Court agencies, and particularly for the dedication and support of one Shelley Eyre, my phenomenal Shelley has been my phenomenal administrative assistant for over 27 years. I'm also grateful for my law clerks, 38 of them over the 30 years, who have served me and the court through the years, and most of them are here today. My law clerks, would you all stand and receive our thanks? And I am overflowing with gratitude for the blessings of love and support and inspiration of my wife of almost 53 years now. Jan and I have been partners in law as I went through night law school, as we raised a family and built a law practice in Lafayette, and as we ventured into judicial service, where starting 29 years ago, she founded, nurtured, and provided leadership for the National Judicial Family Institute. Jan, please stand again and receive our thanks. I'd like to also introduce you to the members of our family who are able to be here today. I have three sons. My middle son, Kyle, and his wife, Chris, and their children, Matthew, Joseph, Hannah, and Audrey are here. Kyle's family, would you all please stand? Kyle is a residential realtor in Carmel. His oldest brother, Drew Dickson, and Drew's son, Max, have come here from London, England. where Drew operates an investment fund. Drew and Max, would you please stand? Jan and I have a third son, Reed, who lives with his wife and daughter in Tucson, Arizona. They cannot be with us here today. But also attending today's ceremony is my retired sister, Aikman Dickson of Hobart, Indiana. Bonnie? Central to serving on the court, of course, has been the joy of laboring with my fellow justices on this bench through the years. I have richly benefited from their incomparable civility, camaraderie, mutual respect, warm friendship, and of course by their brilliant intellects. Their legal analytical skills, their love for the law, and their dedication to the people of this state. These qualities likewise abound in my current colleagues as well, and they're clearly evident from each of the three finalists that Governor Pence will select from to pick my successor. The Indiana Supreme Court is indeed in very good hands. Chief Justice Rush is a most capable leader. She's full of vision and passion and collaborative skills and indefatigable energy, in addition to a keen mind, skillful and precise writing, and sound common sense. Thank you, Chief, for your leadership and for your friendship. The Indiana judiciary is very fortunate to have you at the helm. Justice Robert Rucker, I cannot adequately express my pleasure at having you as a friend and a colleague this past 16 and a half years. You are truly a diamond of a jurist, always well prepared, very thoughtful, meticulous in legal reasoning, an independent thinker and yet a staunch follower of precedent, an excellent and a persuasive writer, and I add a consummate gentleman. Thank you, Bob, for being part of my life. Justice Steve David, I have thoroughly enjoyed and admired your energetic enthusiasm, your being a solid legal thinker with keen awareness of the big picture, your being an irrepressible source of encouragement, your never say no response to any and all requests for involvement in court projects, your being our ambassador everywhere, and for your advocacy for the rule of law. Thank you, Steve, for your... And Justice Mark Massa, master of rhetoric, keen observer of history, eloquent wordsmith and speaker, passionate advocate, and yet thoughtful, thorough, and careful in legal analysis. It has been very enjoyable for me to work with you. I admire the way you can so effectively identify and express our commitment to the basic values of American government. Thank you, Mark. The citizens of Indiana have a Supreme Court that is committed to the hallowed principles of our state and federal constitutions and respectful of legal precedent and of the legislative powers of the General Assembly. But it is also a whirlwind of innovation, outreach, and reorganization in various other areas of judicial administration. We have fully embraced extending digital technology to help the operations of Indiana's trial courts and the improvement in the quality of the justice that they provide. And as most of you are already well aware, this now involves the move to electronic filing of all cases in Indiana's courts. In addition, we're actively engaged in a myriad of other projects and improvements such as veterans courts and other problem-solving courts, and the launching of our new commercial courts initiative. Another Supreme Court project, one I will be privileged to assist in my retirement, is using evidence-based science to help Indiana judges make release decisions about people who have been arrested but are awaiting trial. New techniques and systems can now enhance public safety, assure court appearances, save taxpayer resources, decrease repeat offenses, and most importantly, provide economic fairness, minimizing the impact on families and employment, and maximizing the reliability of guilty pleas. We intend for Indiana to be among the nation's leaders in this effort. When I came to this court in 1986, I left a law practice that I loved dearly. Helping clients, engaging with fellow lawyers, using the law to make meaningful differences in people's lives, it was all wonderful. It was there that I learned to immensely respect the legal profession and to appreciate the importance of lawyers in our society. My years on the court have only deepened that respect and admiration. We are fortunate to have such organizations as the Indiana State Bar Association, various local and specialized bar associations, numerous Inns of Court, that all mobilize and enhance the work of professionalism of the practicing bar. The joys and satisfactions of being a lawyer in private practice were replaced by those of judicial service when I came to this court 3 decades ago. Since then, I have been working with our state's judicial officers, now about 500 in number, officers whose wisdom and thoughtfulness and conscientiousness and dedication I see at every turn. As I step down from this bench today, I do feel an enormous sense of gratitude and an unbridled confidence for the future of Indiana and its judiciary. Thank you, colleagues, law clerks, staff. Thank you, public officials. Thank you, McKinney and Purdue, for my education. Thank you, lawyers and judges. Thank you, family and friends. Thank you, Indiana. And thank you, Heavenly Father.
Thank you, fellow Boilermaker. We'll now hear from Mrs. Jan Dickson, who will be our final speaker this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Loretta, and thank you all for being here. There's a lot of love in this room. We're just so grateful that you're all here to celebrate this moment and to celebrate Indiana, our Constitution, and our legal system. When I was asked to say some things about my husband, I asked 2 of our granddaughters, what are some of the things we might want to say about Grandpa? And 2 of them right away said, tell him he's so nice. He's just so nice. And another one spoke up and said, and he's funny. I don't know if you're aware that Brent Dickson is so funny, but he has a wry sense of humor, so you want to really be listening to catch some of the things he wants to say. Among his favorite things, of course, are the lowly puns. And in his office for many years, I'm not sure which of the law clerks might have brought it in, but is this list? These are terrible puns. You can pull off a pun from the bottom. They are terrible. They're terrible. His favorite one I want you to know is, a chicken crossing the road is poultry in motion. So I have to be listening for this sort of thing all the time, and it is fun. He does have a wry sense of humor. When we looked at the program ahead of time to see if the wording was right on the program that you hold in your hands, there's something in there about my making a tribute or honoring my husband. And he said, "Are you sure you want to just for us to print in their rebuttal?" So this is Brent Dickson and his humor. I first noticed Brent Dickson in the Purdue Student Senate when he was giving a passionate speech about representative government and why people like me, who were there representing organizations instead of housing units, should not have a vote. When he finished speaking, the girl and I, who were sitting next to each other, looked at each other. At the very same time, we said these words: "Wouldn't he be a great lawyer?" I think he is a great lawyer and has been a great judge. Very proud of Brent's work. I think the reason that I was so enthusiastic about voting to not vote again in the Purdue Student Senate was because his argument was so very fair, and fairness has just been at the center of his thinking, at least what I've learned about it. So I wanted to just comment on his fairness just a little bit. It's something that's just been a thread throughout his life. I happened to be sorting through some things at the house. This is kind of challenging, friends. I mean, this is something. There are so many of these wonderful letters that have come in, and one of them from a lawyer who is here today, who has appeared quite often before this court. In preparing for oral argument, someone would always ask, "What will Justice Dickson be concerned about?" And that inquiry would always take us to the basic fairness of the issue. Thank you for always pointing the compass to the highest principles. So I'm very proud of that perspective that those lawyers who see him often would bring to his service in our state. He's quite interested in the precise meaning of the words, happily, and he just focuses on ideas rather than people. He rarely would know what lawyer or judge was involved in a case that he'd see, but he's looking at the ideas. I'm so proud to be married to a man to whom fairness is important, not just for those who are in powerful and influential positions and have good connections, but people who are in poverty. He's every bit as concerned about them, and I'm very proud of that. It's been a good career fit for Brent. He's just found the ideal spot for himself, and he has just loved coming to work every day. But one of the gifts he's given to our children is the idea that they should discover their own gifts and their own interests, and I really appreciate that about him. Drew is the one who, when he was in high school, listening to two people who love to sit around and talk about theories of government, said somebody in this family ought to be interested in money. So Drew is the one, and he asked a lot of questions about conflicts of interest and other issues when Brent was first a judge on family conflicts of interest, and really sparked my interest in some of the questions having to do with family conflicts of interest with judges. And then our son Kyle, who was going into his senior year of high school when Brent was appointed to the court, thought, wow, what's this about moving to a new city when you're a senior in high school? But things kind of turned for Kyle so that he got to go and play in the semi-state. And unlike our new lieutenant governor, Eric Holcomb, he has not shot a basket in every one of the 92 counties. But we're going to encourage him to do that. And Reed, our youngest son, I think was more impacted by going into public life than the others because they were a little older. And at first, it seemed like Brent was the new kid on the block and invited to do a lot of public speaking in evenings and weekends. And pretty soon he started saying, I'll come if I can bring my son along, or I'll come if I can bring my wife along. So we started to learn a lot and pick up a lot of encouraging ideals. And that has really impacted our son Reed, who's quite interested in social justice now and has served in the Peace Corps and was director of the New Orleans Conservation Corps after Katrina. So he picked up a heart for public service from Brent too. But this is a heart that came through Brent's father, I believe, a man who was quite a public servant in Hobart, Indiana. And he started the first Little League and was on the Chamber of Commerce and that sort of thing, but came into some hard times with health and finances as a result of that were really a challenge to the family. But this is where I think Brent Dickson learned that every single crisis is an opportunity. And then just time after time, as I look over our lives, every crisis has been an opportunity. I know there are a lot of people here today who are dealing with dramatic changes in their lives. And so we wish you well in that, and I hope that my husband will be an encouragement to you to let every crisis be an opportunity for you as well. We have some people here today that we want to thank who've just been so helpful to us over the years. We're sorry because of the size of the room, we really couldn't invite a lot of our extended family, or any of our extended family, and most of the friends who would have come when he was sworn in as Chief Justice. But we thought, who are some of the people we want to be sure to ask to come and say thank you to? And so some of those people are here with us today. I know all of you have heard about Brent's being a pianist, and he starts our day usually with some music written by some Hoosier legends who are here with us today. Gloria and Bill Gaither. Gloria and Bill, will you stand? Their music truly gets us through some really challenging times, and we so appreciate what you've given, not only to us, but to the entire world. Thank you for that. We first heard you, I think, when the boys were little and they were singing, "I am a promise, I am a possibility. I am a promise with a capital P." That was maybe the first one we heard from you. But thank you for all you've done for us. We appreciate that. I also want to thank two people who are not able to be here today. When we ran into issues with conflicts of interest and spouses of judges started talking about that, we were delighted to then to be invited to come into a group that was formed by Carolyn Mutz, a Republican, and Judy O'Bannon, a Democrat, when their husbands were in the legislature. They decided to set aside political issues and to try to find common ground and share some practical ideas for coping with public life with such grace and courtesy. And so I'll always be thankful to those two ladies. Also thankful to Randy Shepard for all the systems, Randy, that you put into play during the times that I saw you as Chief Justice that helped the judges throughout our state. Myra, where's Myra? Selby, a trailblazer and an inspiration to me, a good friend, Myra. I want to thank the staff too. Just working on this particular event helped me to realize how many details are taken care of by staff members, and it just takes everybody working together. We so appreciate all your help. The trial judges in our state, Brent has said over and over again, are the ones who do the heavy lifting in our state, and we're so ever grateful for them. And hi to all of you who are off in the Senate chambers or listening by website or webcast or something. We so appreciate your work and the inspiration you give us. The trial judges are the ones who really do the heavy lifting. And we know what they know, and that is that some of the worst problems in our state would come into their attention. And we think it's remarkable that they are able to handle so much. This is the bicentennial year, and so I'm very proud that we're celebrating Brent's retirement in the bicentennial year. As a descendant of a lot of Indiana pioneers, I'm remembering what it was like for them. I've read a lot of their stories, and I'm wondering, what's it going to be like 200 years from now here in our state? And I appreciate the work Brent's done that's going to carry on and be an inspiration at that time. Something that's going to be celebrating our Constitution, our state Constitution, our federal Constitution, something that my ancestors didn't get to enjoy. They came out of some pretty difficult situations to get here. And so we're just thankful for this Constitution and people like the ones on the bench here who are willing to serve. So anyway, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your service. Thank you that you were public servants, not people who are out for ambitious gain, but people to serve others. And I'm just so grateful to know all of you as friends. Thank you. If we might. We gather from various religious traditions, so you might want to just pause and be quiet, or if you will, just join me in prayer. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Thank you for a person who's loved justice, loved mercy, walked humbly. Thank you for people in this room who do that very thing. Thank you for people in this room who are chasing, or not chasing, but experiencing tremendous challenges in their lives, big changes. I pray that Brent Dickson will be an inspiration to them as they face these changes. Thank you that you've not given them a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and love and self-control and servant hearts for serving others. We ask your blessing on the great state of Indiana. Father, we pray that 200 years from now, that we'll have a solid constitution with rights and responsibilities like the ones we enjoy today. And we're so grateful to be here to celebrate the state of Indiana and the service of Brent Dickson. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jan. Well, on behalf of your Indiana Supreme Court, the ceremony is coming to a conclusion, and this will be the last time that this 5 sits up here on this bench. So thank you, Justice Dickson, for your many years. And there'll be a reception. He is keeping his current email. He has decided that I signed the order. He will be a senior judge working on the administrative arm of the court. His email will remain the same, so keep in touch. We're adjourned. Sheriff Miller?
All right. In honor of Justice Dickson's retirement, may we give him a round of applause. This court is adjourned.